Let's build a simple business expense tracker in Excel that helps you log expenses, track categories, and see monthly totals automatically. This is what we are building, a clean tracker where you enter expenses below and everything updates at the top, including monthly totals and a chart split by tax deductibles and non-deductibles.
So let's start with an empty page, and as always I use the green as the background color, change the font to Tahoma with 10 or 11 and my row heights to 15. I will also need row height 30 for my titles, and I leave the first column as a buffer with a column width 1. However, you can pick your own formatting or just ignore the formatting altogether. So for my upper table I do need 8 columns, so that's why I have colored them this teal green, and I have made the column width 20. And then I just type in the names of my columns and change the font to white, center everything, and make everything bold. We will need 12 rows for our upper table because we have 12 months. However, you can add more than that if you have more than 12 payment methods or 12 categories. I will also add some borders, and I'm using the same color I've used for my headers. I do add some bolder borders between different sections, payment method, category, and my monthly values. And I also add some white background color to my payment methods first column and category first column, because this signifies to me that this is my drop-down values that can be changed in the future and can be customizable. We also add our months, but we need to add them as numbers. It is possible to add month names, however, this would be quite tricky if you do not use English in your Excel. And to make this more universal, I'm sticking to numbers. Also with the names, the formulas would have been a bit harder to do, so let's just stick to numbers for now. And this is basically it for the upper table. We will only need to add some formulas, but this would be easier after we have added our log table underneath. And we can also add some values so that you can see how the formulas update automatically and if they're working correctly or not. So here the same thing, I will need to make the header in this teal color and make the row height 30, and then I will need 2 more columns, and the last column will be notes. That's why I will make it a little bit wider. And then I again just type in the column names and make them white, center them, make them bolder. I usually add around 1000 rows. I will just add 70 rows here just to show you how it works. You can add more or less than that. It kind of depends on how many expenses you expect. You can add them in the future, obviously. The white background to kind of signify to me there are no formulas in there, and I can just type in some values. However, I will color the months column in this light green because there are going to be formulas in there. Our payment method and our category are going to be drop down. So I select the whole payment method column, go to data, data validation, list, and then I can just pick the whole upper table column with payment methods. And then I do the same for category. I just highlight the whole category column, and then data, data validation, list, and just highlight all the values in the category column at the upper table. So this is it. And as we can see, the drop-down work. I can also add a new value to payment method, and we see that it updates automatically. Also need to format the date column as short date in my case. However, you can pick any formatting you like for the date. And then we also need to make our tax deductibles and receipt into dropdown. So we go to data validation. After we highlight everything, we can just add the values yes and no, and that's it. However, I do like to add a third value with something like unsure, because sometimes you need to double check if it is tax deductible or not, if there is a receipt or not. So we can double check this later. And we also format the amount as dollar amount, and obviously we're going to sum up the total, the tax deductibles, non-deductibles, so the whole filled part of the upper table has to be dollar amount formatting. We'll pre-fill the table with some sample values now so that we can see how our formulas look. Add the months column formula first. For that, I will use the if formula because we do not want to see any values here if we do not have a date. So for that, if our corresponding date cell is empty, we want to leave this value empty. And if not, we can use the months of the date, and this will give us just a numeric value of the months. So keep in mind, if you don't use English version of Excel, will be your basically translation of months to your language. And also keep in mind that the date has to be date. If Excel does not recognize it as a date, this will lead to some errors. And we can hide the month column. So for the payment method formula, we will use SUMIF because we only have one condition. So the first for SUMIF is the range, where we will be searching for some criteria. So in our case, we will be searching in our payment method column for the corresponding payment method in our cell. So we then highlight the whole payment method column and then pick our corresponding cell. And then we also need the range with the values to sum up, right? So which is then the amount, and I just highlight the corresponding amount column. And this will be it, but if you want to extend this formula, we need to set the range. So we need to add our dollar signs everywhere, and you can do it with the F4 button or just add the dollar amounts manually. So then I can extend the formula. I extend it without formatting. And we can also just copy paste the formula to our category because it will use the same logic. We will obviously need a different column to go through the criteria range, and this will be the category, right? So this will just, we need to change our F to E's, and we need to change our B3 to D3 because we will be looking at the corresponding value at the column D. And then I can extend. Then for the month, we will need the SUMIF formula because we will have two conditions here. It should be either tax deductible or not, and this should have the corresponding months. So SUMIF works a little bit different. Here we need to add the sum range in the beginning. So before with SUMIF, it was criteria range, criteria, and then the sum range, and with SUMIFs, we have sum range in the beginning. So we highlight the whole amount. Then we need to highlight each criteria range. So in our case, it's tax deductible, right? So we highlight the column H. Then it should be yes, right? For it to be tax deductible, so I can just type in the value at yes. And then it should also have the months 1. I did hit the months column. If you still have the monthly column, just highlight it. Other than that, I can just copy paste and change the values because I know that the column is J. And obviously, I also want to have the months 1 in there. Now we can also add dollar signs everywhere so that we can extend the formula for every month. And the same thing here, we can copy paste the same formula from tax deductible into non-deductible. And obviously, the only thing that we need to change is that we are now searching for the values that have no in tax deductible. If you only have 2 values, yes and no, this is it for you. If you have added the unsure like I did, you need to copy the formula again and then add it and then change. So once you changed yes to no, and the other time you change it to unsure, and just sum both of the values, and this is it. This is how you get your non-deductible. Same thing, just extend it without formatting. For the totals, we can just sum up the tax deductible with non-deductible. And this is it for the table. However, we can also add the overall sums for the whole year. So just sum up the tax deductible and extend it. Keep in mind, if you use this for multiple years, this will just sum up everything. It will just sum up the January 2026 with January 2027, because I'm sure you have noticed we have never specified a year. So just keep this in mind. This is annual table, or you will just have every single month added up for each year. So I have just copy pasted the Canva for the February, because I will be making a chart now, and I just want to see the stacking colors. So I just highlight my months, tax deductible and non-deductible, and go to insert all charts, and then I just pick this stacked second one. And actually this is basically it. The chart is done. However, I just add my formatting that I like to add. You don't have to do it, right? So I delete the chart title. I move the legend to the top. Then no fill, no borders for the whole graph. And then I just add the Tahoma font and the color darker for the legend and for the axis. And I can also color those lines in a color a bit darker than the background. You can read the numbers a bit easier from the graph.
And we can also add some conditional formatting for tax deductible and receipt. We can just highlight those two and go to conditional formatting, new rule, and then format only cells that contain specific text, and I will add unsure. And we will format it with the red fill column. Okay, so now I can see unsure. I need to double check that, right? And the last thing that I want to show you is that if you do need more rows in the future, so if you need more rows here, you can just insert them like this, and then you would need to extend all of the formulas here. And for here, you can just highlight it, press Ctrl X to cut it, and then here Ctrl V to insert it, and then you don't have those empty rows for the months, right? So here I can put in something like this, and if I go to my category, I see that the value is here and everything updates automatically. So if you figure it out later, then you need more payment methods or more categories, this is the easy fix. And for the table, please do not just continue typing it here or copy paste it here, because if you remember, we have set the formulas here just to the row 79. So unfortunately, you would need to do the exact same here. You just insert the rows. The problem is also that a column here is hidden. So I would need to unhide it and then extend the formulas here too. And then I can hide it again. And now if we check here, we see that the number of rows updated automatically. So everything should work fine right now. Just do not add the rows in the beginning or in the end, no matter what, because the formulas will not check that this is the same thing going on and will not basically update automatically. So just keep this in mind.
And this is it. So if you need any other features, just let me know down below and I'll think about incorporating them in either my future releases, or maybe if you have a lot of ideas, I can make a new tutorial. And you can also download this template on my Etsy shop. Have ideas for other templates, you can leave them down below too. And other than that, have a great day. Goodbye.